everyone, welcome back to Tasha Could Make That. One of the suggestions I've gotten for things you'd like to see on this channel are finished sewing projects. Of all the things that I sew for myself, and there are many, I think that coats and jackets are the projects that give me the most satisfaction, are the most creative, the biggest stretch of my sewing skills, and the things that I wear the most. So I thought I'd share my top 3 favorite vintage coats that I've made. If you like geeking out over little details and you love coats as much as I do, then this is the video for you. So this is my 3rd favorite vintage coat that I've made. It's from a 1950 pattern, Simplicity 3541. I actually made this before, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the original length, which is a cropped length. They call it a topper in the pattern, cute 50s term. But I basically wanted a version that was longer and covered my butt so it'd be warmer. So I drafted the pieces longer. I made a new muslin. I made a muslin for the first one too because I had to grade it up a size, so I just did a slash and spread method for that, and that worked out well. And for this one, I added welt pockets, because pockets are great. So I wanted to practice that too, because I don't do those very often. But it has bound buttonholes and this great stand-up wing collar. If you stick around long enough, you'll discover I really like this style of collar. So it crops up a lot in things that I make. But I love this coat. I wear it a lot. Yellow is the color that I had in my head that I wanted for this because I use yellow like a neutral. Because I knew that my clothes would stick out from the bottom, so I wanted to make this for like cigarette pants or straight skirts, and it wasn't going to cover the entire length, so I wanted it to coordinate. It was so hard finding a yellow wool coating. I actually ended up, when I thought I was going to find anything at that point, I ended up finding the perfect fabric in New Zealand. So it was worth all of the rigmarole to get fabric from New Zealand for this because I love it and I wear it a ton. For me, one of the things that I love about making coats is personalizing the inside of it. And so I want to show you the inside of this. This is a Nancy Drew print fabric that I got from Spoonflower, just a polyester satin. I wouldn't normally prefer polyester, but that's what it comes in, so that's what I get. And then, if you can see, I always embroider in the back neck facings of my coats, and it's just a little personalization touch. Over the last few coats, I've started embroidering my name. I've embroidered other things before, but I really just love that added little touch. It makes it my own. This is a glittery resin button that I made. I actually made a silicone mold from a dead stock vintage button blank. I just think this button is the perfect little thing for this coat. I've really started enjoying making buttons for my coats as well. I thought I'd show it to you inside out on the dress form too to talk about the lining finishing. So I bag the lining for all the coats that I make. That's not how vintage coat patterns are written. They're written to sew the lining in by hand, and many modern patterns are as well. I prefer doing it this way because it's a completely clean machine finish, and I really like that. I discovered the technique when I first sewed my first coat 10 years ago, and I didn't know anything about tailoring at the time, so I did a bunch of research and discovered this technique for bagging a lining. And I absolutely love it. I've done it for all of my coats since. And it's not an authentic vintage method, but don't let anybody gatekeep vintage sewing for you because I love authentic vintage methods and I also love modern tailoring methods. And so I love merging those things together for my modern vintage wardrobe. Hey, are you liking this video? Please give it a thumbs up. It really helps YouTube know that you like the channel. And please subscribe too. Now back to the vintage coats. My second favorite vintage coat is a bit of a cheat because it's not actually from a vintage pattern. This is the Charm Pattern swing coat from the Patreon line, and I love and adore this coat and this green fabric. Can I give it a hug? I'm giving it a hug. This really fit a gap in my closet. In fact, all the coats that I make are to fit some kind of gap in my closet. The bad news is my closet isn't getting any bigger, but there's still gaps. So, don't know how that's going to work out someday. There's probably going to be more coats to be made. I don't know where I'm going to put them. So the gap that this fills is that I really wanted a long swing coat that would cover the hem length of the majority of my dresses, and this absolutely fits that gap. I always do a muslin when I make a coat, and this was probably the muslin that required the most changes of any of the coats that I've made. I am used to vintage coats or vintage patterns that have pretty roomy armholes, and I wear a lot of batwing styles and cut-on sleeves, and when I originally did the muslin for this, I felt like the armhole was too high, and that is actually technically an armhole that will give you a greater range of motion. It seems maybe counterintuitive, but that is the case. But even still, I needed to kind of just put that aside because I wanted more room to fit more layers underneath it. And so I lowered the armhole. I think what I ended up doing was grading the bottom of the arm side out maybe to, I think, 2 or 3 sizes larger, and then, doing the sleeve pattern accordingly. And I'm really happy with the result. It's comfortable, it fits me really well still, and I can fit as much clothes underneath it as I need to. One of my favorite features about this is the stand-up collar. Are you surprised? I mean, I'm sure you're not. It's not a wing collar, so that's different, but it absolutely looks gorgeous from any direction. I also did a bound buttonhole, and again, just like I did on the other coats, for the pockets, these are side seam pockets. I used flannel for this one to make sure that they're warm enough pockets. I'll show this to you with the dress in a little bit, but I wanted to show you the inside. This is another Spoonflower polyester satin, but this is a super cute travel themed print of vintage, kind of like a reproduction of vintage travel posters, and I think it looks great on this coat. And then also you can see my embroidered back neck facing again. I love doing that touch. This is such a bright, happy, cheerful coat, this green boiled wool. It's actually a knit fabric, and so I was concerned that the fabric might stretch out because there's so much bulk because it's a swing coat, and I did not want it stretching out of shape. And so I tested that out early on and kind of waited the end of the fabric to see what happened if it grew, and it did. And so I actually underlined the entire coat with fusible professional grade interfacing, which I do sometimes on I've done it for other coats too, because I just like the extra stability that it gives. But for this, it was really critical because I didn't want things stretching out of shape, and it's held its shape great. It was a slog to do that because these are some long pieces, so it took some time, but it was absolutely worth it doing that in the end. There's a funny little thing that I did that I can't really show you because it's inside the coat hem, but when I tried it on when I had everything assembled, I just felt like it was flaring out at the side seams, and I didn't really like that. And so what I did is I took a tip from Vintage Techniques and I sewed like a little fabric patch and put a few coins in them. And so there's, I think it's like 50p or something like that from one of our trips to the UK that's sewn inside both side seams at the bottom of the hem. And it just helps allow it to give the right amount of structure, but without standing at attention. And I'm so glad I did it. It worked out great. And my top favorite vintage coat that I've made. This one is really my masterpiece, even though she might be plain to look at, but she holds some secrets. This was sewn from a 1960 pattern, Simplicity 3630, and this one is interlined with Thinsulate. If you're not familiar with Thinsulate, it's like a quilted polyester layer that is in like all modern ski parkas, puffer coats, things like that. Coats that are meant for really seriously cold temperatures. Things that like a lamb's wool interlining isn't going to cut it for. This is meant for deep cold winter, and we do get deep cold winter in Chicago sometimes. So this is the warmest coat that I own by far, except for like this bit because it has bracelet length sleeves. But that's why I sewed elbow length, black, worsted weight gloves on size 1 needles. It was a heart-wrenching project to knit, but absolutely worth it because it keeps my arms warm with this coat. So it was an ordeal to figure out how to interline this with Thinsulate. I'm not gonna lie. I actually have an entire Instagram stories highlight, so you can check out my Instagram account and see more about this from when I was making it. I kind of live vlogged it. But this is just a simple looking coat, but it serves so many purposes because I can wear pants in winter with this coat, which was really ultimately my goal because I have plenty of coats that look great with full dresses, but I didn't really have anything that looked really nice with slacks. And so that is what this coat is for. It's a really thick wool boucle fabric, and it's great to wear, and it looks super authentically vintage, but boy, it's kind of a beast to sew. So that's when all of the tailoring techniques of using a clapper, holding your seams until they're cold, tailor basting, all those good things, those skills came in handy for this because there was a lot. I probably spent more time pressing and waiting for things to cool while I was pressing than I did actually sewing for this coat. Remember when I mentioned not liking cold pockets? These pockets are actually lined with polyester fleece, so they're extra warm. Because it's black, it is so hard to see, so I thought I'd show this to you up close. Those are my vintage buttons that I used, and the patch pockets, which are top stitched, and that beautiful kind of Peter Pan style collar. More bound buttonholes on this, and then let me show you the inside. This, because it's lined with Thinsulate and uses a thick wool, this coat is so heavy, but this is my gorgeous silk charmeuse lining. I love a zhuzhi lining, and then you can see I have also embroidered my name in the facing of this one. And then I'll show you what it looks like on. The only real thing about this coat is when it's super, super cold and I'm layered up, I'm not gonna do this because I'm gonna knock into the mic, but when I close the top button, it's tight enough that it's kind of hard for me to wrap a thick scarf around my neck, which I like to do. And so sometimes I just have to leave the top button open. But this is such a great coat. It comes in handy. I mean, I wore it yesterday. I wear it all the time. I'm so proud of how I was able to hide a Thinsulate lining inside this, and you would just never know that this wasn't a straight up vintage coat. And it's so much warmer than any of the vintage coats, the true vintage coats that I have. And it makes me so happy every time I wear it. So those are my top 3 favorite vintage coats that I've made. I'm entirely self-taught in terms of drafting and tailoring techniques. So my biggest tip to you is if you've never made a coat before but you'd like to try, it's just jump right in. The project as a whole may seem really daunting, but it's really just a bunch of small steps, and those small steps add up, and pretty soon you'll be like, wow, I'm sewing a coat. This is amazing. I'm amazing. And if you've never experienced that feeling sewing, then definitely give coat making a try. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And thank you so much to my subscribers. It means a lot to me. And if you're not a subscriber yet, then please subscribe for more vintage fun on this channel. See you next time. Bye.